Welcome back to Mornings with Zerlina Kate. Lincoln-Goldfinch is an immigration attorney based in Texas. Good morning. Thank you so much for being back with us.
Good morning.
So we have a lot of questions from our callers. We have a couple teachers and school board administrators who had so many questions about the ICE raids. But I wanted to start with what are the rights that people should know that they have, whether or not they are citizens or maybe they are undocumented or in a mixed status family. Like, what are the basic rights everybody should know, almost like a mantra?
Sure. It's the constitutional rights that protect everyone regardless of status. So the first thing is when someone's in their home, the immigration, the police cannot enter that home unless they have a search warrant that's signed by a judge to enter into that home, and it has the name of someone who actually lives there. And everybody inside the house needs to know we don't answer the door for the police. We can see the warrant through the window or under the door. Now, it's a little different if someone's out, on the street, they're stopped, they're pulled over. The first piece of advice I have is that if immigration is questioning someone and they've just been stopped or they're at school or wherever, the first response should be, am I being arrested? Because if you're being arrested, you have a requirement to identify yourself. But if you're not being arrested, you don't have to answer any questions at all. You don't even have to give your name. You have the right to remain silent. And everyone should be exercising that right. And if there's a raid going on and somebody sees it and they want to walk away calmly because they're not caught up in it, that is okay. What you don't want to do is run away or hide or create disruption, because that, of course, can then draw attention and lead to an arrest.
I think what folks are often concerned with, and I think this is human nature, right? If somebody with a badge or a uniform comes up to you and is like, let me see your identification, I think most people would try to obey that authority. And I think in this situation, this context, what we all have to understand is that you do not have to do that, right? You do not have to do that unless they have a warrant. And so what is your message to people out there who are, I think, naturally inclined to listen to people who are in charge or purportedly, are behaving as if they're in charge of something? What's your message to them when, their instinct is to show ID to an ICE agent or somebody in a uniform when they don't actually have to do that?
Look, nobody's looking out for your rights except for you. So it's up to each individual in this country to know what your rights are and to exercise your own rights and to protect your own self. And that's really what it boils down to. But also, you can get yourself into more hot water if you show a document that's not required. I had a client who's from another country. He was driving. He had his U.S. citizen wife next to him in the car, his kids in the back seat. They were all born here. He got pulled over for a license plate issue, something very minor. His wife wasn't driving. She didn't know how to drive. And he showed his foreign passport as his ID, which he didn't have to do. And a few moments later, 9 ICE agents showed up and took him away. And, who knows what would have happened if he had said, I declined to give you a document. Maybe the same thing would have occurred. That's possible. But at least the bare minimum is to exercise our constitutional rights. And then I would also say in the situation, which of course is occurring, where people's rights aren't being respected or there's even abuses or discrimination going on. Like, let's assume ICE or the police are making arrests and they don't even have probable cause. Well, the moment that situation is occurring is not the moment to get into a debate with that officer. What do you mean? Why are you arresting me? This isn't true. You're racist, et cetera. All of that stuff it's the moment of the arrest is not the moment. What we should do in those moments is cooperate. Don't give information, but cooperate. Take notes. Remember everything that happens. Maybe someone can record it with their phone. And then after the fact is when a lawyer gets involved and can help resolve the situation.
That's a really, really important point. Okay, so we had a caller in the first hour. They work for a school board, and they got a directive, basically an email saying that they have to comply with ICE and let them on to school premises. And if they don't, that they would, quote unquote, face legal consequences. And we talked to the president of the American Federation of Teachers yesterday, and to your point, reiterating that without a judicial warrant, you don't have to let ICE agents up in the school to snatch kids away. So how can teachers, school board administrators, people who work in proximity to kids at schools, how can they navigate this? Because I feel like there's a lot of people who are now put in a position where they're going to have to, they're basically the person standing in between immigration and kids in this really difficult moment.
Well, I hope that no teacher is placed in that position. This is really the responsibility of the leadership of the school district and, the school board and the principal on site, and every location needs to have a plan. They need to have a designated person who is the person that stops the police or the authorities and reviews the warrant. They need to have considered that, the public and the private spaces within the building need to be clearly labeled, because the police can enter a public space. They can enter the lobby of the school, for example, if it's open to the public, but maybe there's a private sign on each classroom where they can't enter, and all of that needs to be planned out and considered so that it's not up to the teachers. But if a teacher gets approached by an ICE agent, they can say, I'm sorry, I can't let you in. I don't actually know the protocol. I'm not the point person. I need to direct you to the principal's office, and they can help you. But this is really real. I was just on, one of my lawyer Facebook groups this morning, and one of my lawyer friends was reporting talking to the family of a 13-year-old student where ICE had come and pulled certain kids out of the classroom and interrogated them about their parents. And this poor kid, who's a U.S. citizen, went home and was physically ill because they had worried all day about their parents. I mean, it's so draconian, but it's actually happening all over the U.S. that ICE agents really are going to the schools and terrorizing these children, even the U.S. citizen kids, just to get at the parents.
It is so horrifying. I mean, it's so horrifying. And I keep thinking about the fact that, and we talked about this yesterday with Randy Weingarten, the kids who are going to be impacted by this, show, because, again, there were deportations happening in the Biden administration, but this big show of it, right? Showing up with Dr. Phil and cameras, and Kristi Noem putting on a cowboy hat to announce all these things on the news. The show of it is traumatizing kids because they have to watch their classmates be snatched away or, sitting in fear, as you said, becoming sick because they're afraid for their parents. I mean, this is traumatizing kids of all backgrounds.
It's so horrible. I mean, kids really, there's just a lot post-pandemic. A lot of kids have anxiety. It's just as hard being a kid. And when you add this additional layer on top of it, it's really heartbreaking and it's completely unnecessary. I mean, why would you go terrorize a U.S. citizen child about their parents? What even is the benefit of that? How does that even advance the cause in any way of, handling the immigration issue? I mean, it's so obviously for show and for pain. And I hope everyone sees it for what it is. It's I work with immigrants. I have the conversations with them. I understand that side of it. And I do a lot of videos about it. And I get a lot of hate comments where people say good, they're criminals. This needs to happen. It's just the heartlessness of it. But I hope that people can see, in a situation like this and think why would they go to a school and terrorize a child? What benefit is that other than to cause pain?
One of the other things that I've talked about on the show before is that when they say that folks are quote unquote criminals, a lot of people they've been charged with illegal reentry, right? That's their crime, which is being deported and coming back because, their wife is here. And so I feel like we have to say that more so that people understand that we're not talking about violent criminals and what these immigration rates, the way that they are distinct from any of the deportations that did happen under the Biden administration, for example, is that they were focused on violent criminals. And this is not that. This is not what they're doing.
No, and I think this is a big point of confusion even within the immigrant community. I mean, there were a lot of, naturalized citizens who voted for Trump thinking that, they're just going after the criminals. Well, in the eyes of Trump and Stephen Miller and people on that team, being undocumented equals illegal. And in their eyes, everyone who's ever been undocumented, even if they overstayed a visa, they've all got to go. We're going to do this giant purge, and then maybe we'll consider immigration. And the harm of that is going to be just incredibly massive on an economic level, even if you're not, moved for a humanitarian reason. But really, we are talking about people who have no criminal history. They've never interacted with law enforcement. They do everything they know to do it the right way. They pay their taxes. They're just desperate to do things the right way, and yet they're labeled criminals and people call them illegal. And this is who we're talking about. We're talking about good, hardworking people who really contribute to the society. And that is the bottom line that I think a lot of people don't understand.
Oh, yeah. It's so true. And then you also see the reports that they're rounding up Puerto Ricans, right? And then they're like, oh, whoops, I didn't mean to. My bad. We can go now. They don't even say sorry. And so I feel like one of the things that's happening in this particular moment is it's becoming more clear that this doesn't really have to do with, I mean, this is my opinion. I'm editorializing, but this doesn't really have anything to do with status, quote unquote. This has to do with something else that is, in my opinion, a little bit more sinister than even just being concerned with people being undocumented. Hey, Lincoln-Goldfinch, we'll have you back many times because this is an ongoing story that we have been following very, very closely. Immigration attorney based in Texas. Thank you so much for being back with us and helping us understand what our rights are so that people can not only exercise those rights, but tell other people so that everyone knows and can stay safe. Thank you so much for being with us.